Colour Talk has taken the world by storm. Wherever you look, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, we are seeing the most amazing colouring techniques. It is a very exciting time for us colourists, I do believe. But are these techniques worth all the hype? Do they work in real life? Do mere mortals have the ability to pull them off in this same way? Well, today we are going to find out. I am going to try out some of these techniques using supplies that I am familiar with, and let's see which ones are worth giving a go and maybe which ones we should skip. Without further ado, shall we just try and see what happens? The first technique that I really fancied trying was that of creating iridescent. So in this case, we are going for an iridescent jacket. This is one of my stamps. I enjoy colouring in stamped images, but it works the same as to whether you're doing it with a stamped image or a colouring book. I am really enjoying trying different techniques and really enjoying the Colour Talk world, because I have been colouring for years and years and learnt a certain way and have kind of stuck to that way. So kind of seeing how people use the same equipment but get very different results and really cool effects, it's been great. It's great to feel so far into your colouring journey and to then start learning new stuff. Love it. So basically for this technique, we do a sort of yellow outline around all the edges. Then we go in with the blue. And now you can see me going in with the pink. And if you think about these, like these iridescent rain jackets, that's what I'm going for. They seem to have this sort of pastel, multicoloured, reflective look. And that is what we are trying to capture here. Once we've put the pink layer on, we go in again with yellow. I chose a slightly deeper yellow, just because I fancied it, and it's looking okay, but I decided to give it a second coat just to really help those colours blend together nicely, and it just sort of deepens it. Then we go over the line work with a pink acrylic marker. I kind of wished I'd done a slightly deeper pink for this, but it turns out okay. Then in the centre of that acrylic line, we then put a thin white acrylic line, and that just helps it to look really reflective. When you have something that's really hyper shiny or reflective, it does sort of look really bright. So we do that, and then I'm adding sort of like big chunks of white here in the corner again to make this look hyper reflective, and I'm really happy with how that turned out. Another technique that I wanted to try was the knitted technique, or to make it look knitted. I did struggle with this one. We eventually made it work, but it was a process and I definitely do not have the skill down. So you kind of put a base colour down, and then I'm using my blender. I have to say that the Shuttle Art fine nib came in perfect for that, and you kind of remove some of the colour. This is where it all went wrong for me. I tried to put the slightly darker highlights in, and that just looked well dodgy. I don't know what I was doing. I think I had my V's all slightly off centre and they were supposed to be in alignment. So I decided to just deepen the hat and try again. I decided to keep all my errors in this video just to show you that, it's a learning curve and we're all on it. So we try again. This time I make the hat slightly darker, come in again with the blender and do those little V's. I also still like to work with shadows, so I did create shadows in the creases of the hat. To be honest, I gave up trying to add the darker lines. It just wasn't working for me. So I kind of went over it all again with blender again and then white pen. And it looks okay. I need to practice it. Now this one is a frosted glass technique that I'd seen, and it looked really cool, and I thought, oh, this would maybe work with the mug. Because you get those clear mugs, and I thought that would maybe work. So you put actually PVA glue down first in a really thin layer and then colour over it. I think it worked really well. I can see how it works. I just don't think the object that I chose to colour with this particular technique suited it. But it does look really frosty, like she's drinking a hot mug outside and it's going to go on frosty. But I would really like to do it with a lantern. This is one of the most favourite things that I have discovered from Colour Talk and Colour Tube and all of that sort of stuff, is going over the black lines with an acrylic marker, and it just sort of really softens it. And I've got the Shuttle Art acrylic fine liner gel pens now, and they are amazing for that particular technique, but I love the fact it gives a no line look really easy. So that's our first experiment all done. It was a learning curve. There's bits I like, there's bits that I need to kind of work on, but it turned out okay. The next one that I wanted to do is just really involves playing with light. I see loads of really creative lighting techniques, and I've seen that from multiple creators. This particular one, I have based the inspiration from Cat Art Illustrations here on YouTube. She does the most amazing, realistic portraits using alcohol markers, and she works with like contrast really, really well, and lighting is a big feature. So a lot of her work has these like really dark purples contrasted with the yellow light, and it works really well because they're opposite each other on the colour wheel as well. And it's just something that I really wanted to try, but boy, was this outside my comfort zone. Thought this was a bit of, I'm also filming a little bit for a short. I thought I might make quite a creative, you know, thing that you're seeing it through 2 screens. Anyway, I started off putting the sparkle bit down first so that I could position where my light was and maintain that as a reference throughout while I worked. I learned to colour in a very specific way, so I always work dark to light. I would never do more than 3 layers. 2 layers was like the ultimate amount of layers, and 3 was if you really had to fix it, but it shouldn't. It almost fell against the rules. Well, Cat doesn't work like that. Cat puts a layer upon layer upon a layer of alcohol markers and blends it within an inch of its life. And this was so different because I don't know how many layers I did on this, but we did a lot. And I really kind of like how this turned out. Now, after I'd kind of coloured all the skin in with those kind of purpley tones, I wasn't sure how to tackle the wings, but I thought we've just played with the iridescent look. Let's try that because, you know, fairies have iridescent wings. So I did the sort of same technique of the same colours, but I've done it much, much softer. And I enjoyed doing this. Whilst I'm talking about this, I have to give out a huge shout out to Pink Frog. This is their card. I'd reached out to them because I have always been a bit of a paper snob when it came to using my alcohol markers, and I like Express It card. This is me, sorry, I will go back to the card, but this is me here. Because the wings are iridescent, I felt I had to show that her body was in front, so you can see me sort of painting in where the shoulders and the body would be with a very pale lilac, so we still get that sort of idea of her body being in front of these iridescent wings. But yeah, as you can see, I am putting multiple, lots of layers on this particular piece, and as I said, I was a bit of a paper snob. I only ever used Express It card because it is brilliant and it holds ink really well. However, it has got to be ridiculously expensive, like 50 odd quid for 20 sheets, so I just couldn't justify that. So I've heard lots of people talk about the Pink Frog card stock, so I reached out to them and asked which they felt would be best for using alcohol markers, and they actually kindly sent me this to have a play with. Well, honestly, I am so impressed. This will now be my new card of choice. It is a very reasonably priced, and this, I have never used this amount of ink on any piece whatsoever. It blended beautifully. It took and held all of that alcohol without bleeding too much. There was a little bit, but to be honest, that was to be expected. I think if I was to colour in my normal colouring style, you would not have got that at all. But we had a huge amount on there, and the paper took it really well. So I will link to their website in the description box below, but amazing paper for using your alcohol markers. You saw me just kind of fill in the background. That was a bit of a scary moment because I'd coloured her up and thought, oh, she's perfect. I really, really love her. I think I'll just keep the background neutral. And then I was like, but that's not going to work because if it was to reflect that much, there needs to be a dark background. So I did it. It was scary, but I did it. And then we did put the actual isopropyl alcohol on it and blended it all out, and it looks really cool. Now, again, I was using the similar technique to what we did with the iridescent. So we've got the soft iridescent wings, not as pronounced as the first one that we did. And instead of going over with pink, I've gone over with gold. and then I went in the inside of the gold with a white gel pen. You can see it slightly more on the right hand side of the screen. You can see that that white is inside the gold. It was quite difficult to capture this on camera, but hopefully you get the idea of what I was actually doing. We'd lost some of the strands of her hair in creating that background, so I took the picture out and I drew those back in, but using the same gold pen, and I just think it helps it to look really ethereal and magical. Absolutely adore how this turned out. Once we kind of done the bulk of it, her eyes had got lost, so we needed to really emphasize those again. So again, I've brought out my Shuttle Art 0.6 acrylic gel pens. These are my new most favoritist supply. Honestly, I can see these being a favorite, and I managed to emphasize the eyes again and get those eyelashes back in. And then we just finally need to work on this sort of magical swirl that is surrounding her. So I get my acrylic markers to really build that up and create sort of like loose movement. I've got strokes because I wanted it to look like it was moving. And then we dotted and dotted and dotted and dotted and dotted within an inch of its life. And finally, I just wanted to create a few sort of extra little, almost like firefly glows. So we put a bit of acrylic marker down, white paint, and then dot around it. I absolutely adore this, so thank you to Kat for her inspiration. This is my favoritist ever colouring piece that I have ever done. So I'm so grateful to everyone that's inspired me. The paper held up, my products held up. It was fun. I would definitely try it. The last technique that I am going to try, I originally saw it with Colour and Craft with Colleen, and this is a torn effect. So I had just sort of actually tore a bit of paper. You don't necessarily need to do that, but it was quite good at the end to get a cool effect. But you just need to mark out where the paper is going to be torn. This is actually the free digital image. I do a free digital image every month, and this is this month's version. Again, I will link to it in the description box below if you fancy playing with this. And in my head, I was wanting to sort of show the difference between winter and spring. So it's like we're all desperate for spring now. We're done with winter. We want to feel the spring air. So I've just coloured this with cool blues, used very similar to techniques to what we've done so far. So it's monochromatic with an extra bit of white just to give it a really snowy, icy effect. Once I had done that, it was then time to start on the middle section of this particular project. So I have gone for pinks because I want there to be a contrast with the sky. So we've kind of gone for like a summer sunset. Again, coloured that in. Again, I've got so confident now with this reflective light thing. I was like, oh, the sky is pink. Everything needs a pink hue. But I actually really love how that turned out. So I've really enjoyed experimenting. We then, to create the final torn effect, draw along the edge of the lines between the two sections with white pen. Sorry about my head. I really had to focus on this. I tried to edit my head out, but you know, some bits just stayed in. I do apologise. There wasn't much I could do about it. Then I take some grey markers and just go around the edge of where we've put the white down to create a little bit of shadow. So I took a slightly darker one and a lighter one and blended it out. It wasn't looking quite right yet because those lines were a bit too definite. So once I'd actually got the marker down, I then came in with the white pen again and sort of almost scribbled along the edge so that it looked torn. And I think once I had done that, it looked so good. And this is why I did tore the bit of paper, because that looks really cool. Sorry about the lighting. But anyway, absolutely love how this turned out. Those are all the techniques that I've tried. I've barely scratched the surface, so I think this is an idea that I will be revisiting. But I hope you have enjoyed the techniques that we have covered in today's video. I hope you have enjoyed today's video where we have taken on a few new techniques. Hopefully maybe what we have seen is that it's worth pushing ourselves out our comfort zone. This has got to be one of my most favourite colouring pieces I have ever done, and yet I felt very uncomfortable through most of it. But it was worth it. I'm in love. I will be trying some of these techniques again. Is there any techniques that we covered today that you're planning on trying? If you are, please do let me know in the comments below. I look forward to seeing your work, and I will be back again next Friday with a brand new video. Take care and goodbye.